If you feel you have what it takes to be awarded as the best in the business, here is your chance to apply. Head on over to our website, download the form and apply. If you face any troubles when applying or feel the need to get in touch with us directly, email us, call us, tweet at me directly at Sunanda_J or join our Facebook group.
Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, ET Now's daily initiative that celebrates the undying entrepreneurial spirit of micro, small and medium enterprises. This is the only daily MSME platform in the country, a show where you can voice your concerns and get answers to all your queries directly from our team of experts. We understand the issues that you, the MSME entrepreneur, face, and this show aims to bring you the most relevant and updated information on everything related to your businesses. Tonight on the show to answer your queries, I have with me PK Malhotra. He's the former Deputy Managing Director at SBI. We also have Manish Bansal, CEO of SME Value Advisors. All right, let's kickstart the show by taking our first query, and this is a call which is coming to us from the line of Akasha. Akash, what's your query for our experts?
How can I do the marketing of my business on low budget?
So one thing that a lot of our entrepreneurs and startups ask us, of course, is how they can cut back on a lot of costs. I know a simple answer to Akash's question can possibly be using social media much more when it comes to marketing. But is there a slightly longer answer and any other alternatives you might want to suggest?
Actually, for startups, it's social media, as you suggest, is probably the best because that is where the costs are minimum. But social media alone would not be able to take them where they really want to do. So they have to have a proper capital burn for advertisements, and the way those advertisements are played, the areas, the kind of channels that they choose, all of those things will matter in how they really get their money's worth out of those advertisement campaigns. They have to be done, not necessarily in the beginning, but once they come to a certain stage where they feel the startups can now go on to bigger platform, that is the time when the advertisements must hit the market.
Okay.
If I had to think, my experience as an entrepreneur and working with several of these, sort of called emerging or SME companies is, they should not try to focus upon pan-India at all. What they should be focusing on is, I use the term called circle of influence or the circle of reach, which is easier, cheaper, faster way people know them. And once they have that circle of sort of called influence or reach, they should identify one or two of the top customers from their target segment. Pick, work with them and establish the proof of concept. Once they have done that part, then selling becomes very easy. To my mind, the best customer, as they say, is the satisfied customer. So I would choose to operate in a specific geography, and then within that work initially with one or two of the top customers, establish yourself, demonstrate the results, and then basically go around. It will be the most, I would think, the efficient and the effective way.
All right. Akash, trust that answers your query. Thanks for calling in with that. Our next query is an email which is coming to us from Safan Fodkar. He's written in to us to say what are the challenges that Indian companies face in manufacturing as far as the high-tech generator space is concerned. Now that's a very technical space. Let's then maybe try and broad base it to the entire manufacturing space and talk about what some of the challenges are right now. One, of course, is how the banking system, given the NPAs at a decade high almost, the lending as far as companies go has of course come down. MSMEs tell us they've taken a particular knock on that. The export markets, there are not too many markets right now, I would assume, that are looking very good when it comes to manufacturing, even though the government is trying to push it with its Make in India. So how would you like to talk to someone who's in the manufacturing space about what they should keep in mind?
Challenges for SMEs in manufacturing space have not changed too much over the years. The challenges start right from the raw material stage and they go to the collection of their receivables. As you mentioned, lately, yes, the banks have become a little, I would say, slow in processing their requests for finance. But then As far as the smaller of the SMEs are concerned, I'm not as far as my knowledge goes, the smaller of the SMEs have not been hit so badly because banks also have their targets to meet. They have to finance a certain numbers definitely. But the challenges which are there, I would say, is in finding the right kind of partners in marketing and getting their money back from the market. That probably today is a bigger challenge than getting the money from the bank for running the business. Commodities are very low today, so getting the raw material is not an issue. Manufacturing, of course, if they have the right technology, manufacturing should not be so difficult. The bigger part is selling in the market and also getting their money back. I'm sure Manish will be able to put a little more light on this.
So my thought on manufacturing or anything, be it the service side, Sunanda, has been the differentiation. I think this is the one key aspect I would truly focus on in any business I look at as an investor, as an investment banker, or anything which I explore as an entrepreneur. Unfortunately, when I see around, most of the manufacturers are trying to make the Me Too things. And whenever you are into Me Too space, what are you competing on? You are competing on either the price or you are competing on the credit. There is very little third thing which I see around you are competing on. And both these things are not good for the business to sustain in the long run. So I would really, tell people or tell entrepreneurs, spend a lot of time thinking, researching, figuring out where is the differentiation in their offering. The product or the service, until it's differentiated, will always create a competitive landscape which in some time, sooner or later, will kill the guy back. So every manufacturing part has to focus upon differentiation. Until you are there, I think you will get into problem whatever the manufacturing or the services.
Sure. Okay. I trust that answers your query, Safan. In fact, do stay tuned. We'll tell you how you can reach us, whether it is on email or Facebook at the end of the show. And speaking of Facebook, this next query is coming to us on social media. Rajesh Savla has written in to say he is a part of a real estate consultancy. He's written in to our experts to ask how he can go about expanding his business and wants to know what some of the areas that he can expand into are. Now, this is a little bit of a catch-22, if I may say so, because a lot of our experts advise our MSMEs, don't expand right now. Focus on your core areas. You do much better if you're doing that. What would your advice be to him?
I would agree with you that today is not the time to expand in real estate particularly. Concentrate on whatever he is doing, make some kind of name there, have some USP of his own during these tough times, and once the market becomes a little more amenable, he can expand into many other areas. But as of today, yes, I would agree that he should consider not the best time to expand into too many areas, even within the same kind of industry.
Sunanda, if I were to add to what sir said, I would think that I don't have the right answer to it, but I can definitely point the person to think, on the answer. So what I would essentially say is create a very simple matrix, Sunanda, which we keep doing with a lot of entrepreneurs all the time. On one side, let's say, on one axis, you take the customers, existing customers and the new customers. On the other side, you take the product or services which is existing and the new one. And you would figure out that out of these 4 quartiles, you are only addressing the one, which is the existing customers and the existing product suite, right? So you have now new products which are there, which you can serve to with the existing customers, or you can have the new customers and the existing product suite. So essentially, you're talking about 3 quartiles, which are available to you as an opportunity space. So one has to essentially ask that question, do I focus upon the existing products and reach out to the new set of customers, or go and interact with my existing customers and ask where are the challenges they are facing and do I have any space to add value to. Essentially, I'm talking about product expansion. So they are the only two ways to grow. Either you expand the product or service or expand the customer suite. So I would essentially say draw the quartile. I would essentially request Rajesh to draw the quartile, spend time thinking, interact with the existing customers and figure out what strategy he would like to play. Product expansion or the customer expansion. That's the only thing. I don't think there's an answer behind it.
Interesting. All right, thanks for that answer, and I trust Rajesh that answers your query. In fact, let's take a very quick break though at this point. Much more on the other side in terms of taking in your query, so just stay tuned. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, and tonight we're taking in all of your queries with our panel of experts. This next query is an email which is coming to us from Nafisa Khan. Nafisa has written in to us to say that Capital, of course, runs a business. She wants to know that if an adequate amount of funds is not arranged in a stipulated time frame, the business, of course, can suffer and almost break down, especially during the early phases. An enterprise depends largely on loans from banks and several financing institutions. And says that the lack of availability of funds is becoming a major obstacle as far as the growth of business is concerned. But is getting financial help from banks the only options for SMEs to raise funds? Can SME owners think of alternative ways to raise funds for their business is her question. And Mr. Malhotra, that's right up your alley. So let me start with you. What would you advise Nafisa?
I would request Nafisa to not write off the banks. She seems to be, already thinking that banks are not going to help her. Nafisa, I would suggest, it looks like you are in the beginning of your enterprise, you have not expanded much yet. I would suggest that you have a very close look on what you are doing. Prepare a good business model, make sure that the business model yields cash which the banks can see, and if the business model that you draw does not give confidence to you, or if it is deficient in some aspect, take some expert help, get a good business model and start you seem to have started already. If you are, if your business model you think fits into what I have just said, you go to my erstwhile bank, State Bank of India, I am absolutely sure that funding will not be a problem. But I will again stress that your business model must have good cash flow potentials. Banks fund on potential, all right, but those potentials should be on very, very sound assumptions. If your assumptions are right, if your business model is right, if the potential is there in the market, I am absolutely sure that even in today's days, the banks definitely fund you. Of course, there are other alternate means of funding, which I am sure Manish will be able to elaborate a lot more. But I would suggest that you don't give up on the banks as yet.
Okay, maybe once you finish, Manish, I just have a follow-on question.
First thing I would say is, my experience is that businesses don't fail because of the inadequacy of funds. I think there are many more issues with regard to maybe product or service one has chosen. The relevance of that, whether the customers really need it, even if customers need it, would they pay for that part? The positioning, the people, the customer interaction. There are so many reasons why businesses fail. And my experience, limited experience of some maybe 2 decades, reveals that businesses don't essentially fail for funds, number one. Number two, when I come to the question, unfortunately or fortunately, most of the entrepreneurs generally think about the debt and nothing beyond. One very printing machine of cash, it's not only with the Reserve Bank of India or the Fed of the US. Printing machine is right lying there in the businesses, which is the equity. But unfortunately, they do not understand that part, how printing equities or the shares, which they can exchange for cash with the people around, can generate cash for them. So that's lack of probably knowledge, the people around them. So they have to educate themselves a lot better on how the equity can be used, which essentially means offering the ownership to the people around. Second part of the business, essentially when you talk about raising capital, there are so many ways of raising capital. For example, when people give you on credit raw material, essentially they are funding you. So they are the suppliers, probably you can go and creatively ask for funding. There are the customers who can fund you, which essentially means advance. If a customer is offering, if I'm really relevant to you and you offer me the advance, actually you have funded my business, right? So one has to really think very creatively. It's not the lack of resources, it's the lack of resourcefulness. That's the term I use all the time, that entrepreneur really needs to become entrepreneurial in its approach when it comes to raising capital as well, right? Which essentially means going to suppliers, customers, distributors, saying I will give you, X piece of exclusive territory and you have to pay me for that. And there are so many more ways to think about it. So one has to really think from that perspective, and equity, which I would essentially think is a major piece which is available with the entrepreneur, and they can really unleash the power of equity, to raise the capital, which unfortunately or fortunately people just don't.
Sure.
Right? So they have to really think very creatively on the subject.
Okay, so I just have a follow-on question. Since Nafisa's raised it, she's talking about banks as well as what the other funding options are. I know for a lot of startups and MSMEs, particularly those startups which are not in the tech space, would approaching a PE or a VC in the initial stages A be an option, B be advisable? And would you advise between, the first port of call to really be approaching banks, or would it be approaching, say, a private equity or a venture capital, assuming that option is available?
You can approach anyone, but the point is, do they really look at you from a positive perspective? And the answer to that question is no. Right? So most of the time, if I were to talk about last 10 years of my experience in this space, until you are a critical size, right, and are at that juncture of growth where the infusion of only capital can take you from level A to B or orbit A to orbit B or C, till then, there is no money. Right? So typically 50, 70, 100, 80 crore kind of turnover, a reasonable profitability, an opportunity space which looks pretty large, capabilities with the companies which can address that opportunity space. Until you have all those things with you, you and me can keep knocking the private equities and the VCs, but there is no one to fund.
All right, that's a very interesting conversation that we've had on fundraising. Nafisa, do trust that answers your query. Our next one is coming to us on social media. Sahil Khan has written to us on Facebook saying, wants to know how he can go about getting the collaboration with an expert. This is essentially or a mentor who's skilled in raising finance. Will this help in the smooth journey of his business? So essentially he's asking, Sahil wants to know if there is someone, an expert, while we advise our MSMEs to perhaps get a branding and marketing expert to help you build the right kind of brand. Is there also someone who can help them navigate through what the different processes are as far as fundraising is concerned?
Collaboration and a mentor, I would say these are two different things. After coming out from that side for about a year, I've been interacting a lot with SME as well as large corporates also, and I find that there is definitely need for understanding what the banks are looking for. I sometimes really feel that we have a huge SME population, and barely 10% of that population is being funded by the banks. Whereas the banks today are not able to reach their target of funding SMEs and MSMEs. After coming out of the bank, I have realized that the gap between what the banks are looking at and what the entrepreneurs is offering to the bank is huge. Entrepreneur is so involved in the process and also the end result of his effort that he is not really trying to understand what the bank wants. All the banks in India basically work on one principle. It is not that their requirements are quite different from each other. Maybe when it comes from public sector bank and private sector banks, the requirements are a little different. But largely the banks, as I mentioned in one of the previous questions also, largely the banks look at your business model, how robust it is, and what all are the areas where you can fail, and whether you have a backup for each one of those potential minefields. This is where most of the entrepreneurs have no answer. They are so taken up with the business, the process, that the second and third line of defense, whenever a banker asks about that second or third line of defense, they really don't have any answer. Not only that, I find that many of the experts who are there in the market are basically one kind of professionals. They are not really the professionals who have the full knowledge of what the banks are looking at. So, I think the entrepreneurs should interact much more with bankers, serving bankers, retired bankers, people who have been in the credit space. So, if they go and talk to them, if they understand exactly the requirements that the bankers have for debt funding, I am sure the requirements are not very onerous. They will be able to understand, they will be able to feed what the bankers actually want. So, mentors definitely yes. Collaboration, I do not really know whether any collaboration is needed. They can go for people who have been in the credit side on the banking space, working, retired, whatever, and I am sure it will give very good results.
Alright, it looks like we've run completely out of time, but gentlemen, as always, such a pleasure to have both of you here on the panel with us tonight to answer all of your queries. Do remember, if you have any query pertaining to any aspect of your business, you can always write in to us at leadersoftomorrow@times-group.com. You can tweet at me personally. My Twitter handle is Sunanda_J. You can reach us on social media using the hashtag LOT or call us on that number you see flashing on your screen. We promise to have all your queries answered. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.
If you feel you have what it takes to be awarded as the best in the business, here is your chance to apply. Head on over to our website, download the form and apply. If you face any troubles when applying or feel the need to get in touch with us directly, email us, call us, tweet at me directly at Sunanda_J or join our Facebook group.